Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of Supernatural, Raising Hell. And this was a strange episode. Mainly because I felt more bored as things were going on because it was kind of all over the place. We got some interesting things to go on. We got information on what's going on with God and Sam. We got an appearance by Amara, thank goodness. And we got some other weird things that really didn't need to be in here. And certain things that were in here that could have been expounded upon at greater length. So we get the usual open where somebody is being stupid and decides to go into the quarantine zone that the hunters have set up, and because they need allergy medicine for their kid. And of course, they're rambling about them being kind of nervous for the spelling bee and everything like that. And then they get stabbed by the dude because evidently it was a neighbor, but they're like, yeah, you're possessed by a ghost. And the ghost starts spelling disembowel, and I'm just like, okay. I understand what it was trying to go for. It just didn't really set off the ghost as really menacing or anything to me. I was just like, oh, okay, that was pretty much what I was expecting to happen. And this ghost becomes prominent because it is the ghost of Jack the Ripper. And he looks interestingly enough, but throughout the episode, even though the ghost of Jack the Ripper is pretty much heading up this contingent of antagonists for this episode, he doesn't really come off as that much of a threat. He's just kind of there as a plot obstacle. Not much is done with him except the usual kind of, okay, he's the head of the antagonistic group, and that's about it. He doesn't really show that much charisma or anything that could be related to Jack the Ripper, really, except for the opening one where he disembowels someone. So, as we see that after the cold open, we see that Sam and Castiel are trying to figure out what to do because everybody's getting antsy. Sam, of course, tries to allay people's fears and then asks them if they have any questions, and everybody kind of does. And Cass is like, alright, because this is not a kind of tenable situation. They can't keep lying to these people, and the containment of the whole ghost thing is only a temporary solution. And we see that Belcafor is kind of like talking back and forth between Dean, being like, yeah, kind of like hell, just the way it was. I'm just doing what I'm doing. I can't, that was a one-time thing with the containment spell. I'm like, okay, that's kind of convenient. And there's a lot of kind of convenient things that happen in here. It takes a good writer and a good writing team to make things that would kind of pretty much be plot convenient to happen organically. It's like, okay, it's never really explained why that was a kind of one-shot thing. It would have been great for him to be able to say that this is going to be one shot. We've got to find out a better kind of containment method. So they're pretty much patrolling and trying to look around because, of course, people are starting to hear that people are missing. The husband, I guess, of the one chick that got taken out in the beginning decides to go off with some other people. They go in and get pretty much annihilated by the ghosts and taken over. And I'm just like, oh god, this is an episode where the town folks are just going to be stupid as shit and just die. And yep, pretty much what happens. There's like no character there. It's just like, oh, meat to the grinder, boys. Because they're pretty much held hostage by Jack the Ripper. It's like, let us out, you motherfucker. And it's like, nope. And they get saved by Ketch, of all things. Because Rowena also pops up as well to help out. And then begins the whole Rowena Ketch thing. This is like one of the worst things that I've seen of pretty much trying to force chemistry between characters, because I wouldn't have minded them at least having a repertoire first and then kind of working towards something, but this is like they're ready to bone each other smack dab off like ain't nobody's business. They pretty much were trying to figure out Ketch's expertise and everything. He kind of heard what was going on in the area. He says at the beginning, but then of course it comes out that he's there to assassinate Belkafor for the demon Ardat, because evidently she's got a hate boner for Belkafor. It's like, alright, that's interesting. The only real character that I've really been liking so far has been Belkafor's. We don't really completely know his motivations, and it isn't just Jack acting like a demon dick dude. He has different kind of mannerisms, like, hey, even if this demon really does hate you, it kind of goes a little bit against you just being that kind of low-level demon who does his, like, desk work at hell and wants to go back to that. So we'll kind of have to see if we get anything on that front. I would like to, because he's the most interesting one at this point. But Ketch has been brought in. He's got his iron shooting assault rifle, because that's how they kind of saved some of the people that were being... I don't even know if they were saved. One dude's insides were pretty much getting ripped and shredded by the ghost that had taken him over. It's like, okay, we'll have to see how that goes. So they decide to pretty much make the same kind of thing that they were going to use on Amara as a soul bomb. But they're essentially ghost busting. Busting makes me feel good kind of shit. Trapping them in a whole kind of crystal thing. So we get Ketch and Rowena pretty much making googly eyes at each other, getting ready to almost bang at one point, and being like, oh, I'm kind of a tactical dude, and here's this stuff that we came up with the British Men of Letters. This will save you about like 2 steps in your process. I'm like, okay. Alright. And we see that they're pretty much patrolling the town and everything. Ketch puts on this iron, chain, because that would stop possessions. That becomes kind of important later on, only because of just why he doesn't have it later. So him and Dean are pretty much just trying to figure out what's going on and are patrolling the area. When they see that they have to go and try and figure out what's going on, they kind of get jacked into one of the places, and one of the other ghosts is trying to like take them out. And who should pop up? Kevin Tran. It's like, holy shit, this show really loves to shit on this character. I'm like, Kevin has gone through a fuck ton. And they're like, alright, we need to know what's going on with these ghosts. Of course, Jack the Ripper's trying to get them all together. They figure out that the warding is weakening, and they're trying to pretty much push their luck. And we find out that God did not keep his promise to let Kevin into heaven and everything. So we're like, okay, this is pretty much painting God to be a complete and utter dick. And Kevin has very much been tortured in hell. Because at one point, we'd seen that Belkafor had been familiar with Kevin Tran and all that. It's like, oh God, that kind of sucks. And of course, we get a whole millennial joke, and they're like a typical millennial. It's like, okay, alright. And then of course Kevin tries to act badass, but he's pretty much just trying to get any kind of information he can, but that's of course when the ghosts try and use that kind of against them, because Rowena and Ketch are getting kind of close to their completion, and they're trying to go and use it, but they get shanghaied by Jack the Ripper, and Rowena runs off, but Ketch is captured, and he's like, hey, I want you to take a message to the Winchesters that we've got Kevin Tran. And they're like, shit, Kevin. Also, we got throughout this episode that we saw that Dean and Castiel were arguing about like free will and everything. If God has set this all up, what does it all mean? And I'm like, that's actually a very good question. Does free will exist here? And Cass is trying to make the point that even if this whole obstacle course was set up, we're the real things in it. And Dean's like, are we really? It's interesting to see him kind of questioning the whole free will concept, but it's more just kind of like that surface level and things that we've kind of seen before. How long before we see Dean get back to his usual kind of circle that we go through without the whole hero's journey? He's been doing this and getting to these same conclusions, and then having other kind of tests and trials take him to another road of thinking to only circle back. Not that their beliefs shouldn't be challenged, but it's like, we're still doing the same thing with the same kind of results. So we've gotten to a point where they're like, okay, let's figure out what we can do here. They pretty much are able to go in there. They've got their chains, but they don't have any guns. And he's like, hey, let us out. He's like, no. All right, then. I'll eat Kevin Tran trying to do it. And then, of course, Rowena pops in with Cass and kind of ghost busts a couple of them, but can't get them all. And they kind of the rest of the ghosts bug out. They're able to kind of get beyond the line because they decided to move and take down one of the weakened points. But Rowena just kind of stands back and kind of lets everything she's sucking up one or two at a time or whatnot. And then we see Ketch pop up out of nowhere because this is where it kind of gets really kind of funky and really kind of plot contrivancy, because how was he able to get through? Otherwise, the other ghosts would have been able to get through, because evidently Ketch was possessed by Jack the Ripper. Pretty much stole the things, like, hey, we could just use this and get the rest of these ghosts out of here and destroy this whole thing. He's like, okay. And then Dean just almost automatically shoots him in the shoulder and the leg to get the ghost out of him. They pick it up and they pretty much suck the rest of them in, but we've still got the problem of the ghosts everywhere coming up. So we got to figure out what to do with this. Ketch, of course, gets carted off. Rowena still makes googly eyes, and they still need to figure out what to do since more souls are pouring out of hell. Kevin, of course, is safer and decides to not go back to hell and instead want to wander the earth. We get a nice touching moment with Kevin talking to the Winchester brothers and everything, and them apologizing, like, hey, sometimes they're just things you can't make up for. And I'm just like, yeah, but you're getting really fucked. So he's decided to wander the earth as a ghost because he doesn't want to go back to hell. I'm like, I agree with that decision. I wouldn't question that at all. I'm like, let's see, go to hell, wander the earth, and possibly go insane. Why didn't they just kind of Bobby his ass? Like, bust him up in like a little flask or whatnot so that way they can keep an eye on his ass? I know that the flask was connected to Bobby, but they could have like bonded him to something so that way they could keep an eye on him and maybe like help him if he's starting to go, I don't know, murder crazy? I don't know. But Beltafor is able to open a hole and let him out, and that's pretty much that. The other bits of information that we got throughout this episode, because it's easier to kind of talk about it in its own kind of strain because of how jumpy it was, is that God goes and talks to Amara. Because evidently Amara was in Reno. And, I don't know, being a darkness entity and the sibling of God, you would kind of known off the bat if he wasn't hitting in his weight class. You know what I mean? Kind of depowered or whatnot. Because we see him kind of talking to her, trying to kind of butter her up. And evidently he possibly smote the masseuse that she had, but she's evidently pretty much okay with creation now, which is kind of weird, because if she's okay with creation, she would have understood what he had tried to do. And evidently, it might kind of explain why when he said this is the end, it didn't go off exactly as you would probably imagine. I don't know. Because he like pops up and says, hey, how's that ending of Game of Thrones? It's pretty great, wasn't it? I'm like, okay, this is where we're going. We got that. We got him like completely fucking over Kevin Tran. He's still not complete dick level of Preacher's God yet. So we'll have to see how that plans out. But he wants to do stuff with Amara and everything, and she's like, no, I want to do stuff myself. He's like, wait a minute. You're hurt. You're not at full strength. And is like messing with his shoulder, and we see him mess with it later, and it, of course, also affects Sam as we see it cut. It's like, okay, they're linked. That's proof. So, one of two scenarios could potentially occur. Either they have to kill Sam and God at the same time, or Sam becomes God. Like, I don't know. It's weird kind of scenarios. There can be others that occur, but we'll kind of have to see. Sam's always been kind of like the sacrificial one, even though they take turns and just keep coming back. We'll have to see how that one pans out, but it's nice to have that confirmed and that he can't really fight Amara, and she kind of leaves him and kind of gloats that, yeah, you sealed me away that one time, but now I'm kind of doing the same to you, meaning that God can't jump from this universe. He was pretty much trying to use his slides to get out of this universe that he pretty much set on an apocalyptic course. Interesting. I like that kind of plan and potential for this character. Again, will they deliver and execute? That is always the key. You can have the best idea ever. Flying cars that shit French toast. If you don't execute it well, it's a nightmare that kills people shooting out flaming French toast. Again, it's all down to execution. So we'll kind of have to see what happens with that and how it kind of affects the game plan moving forward. So now we're 18 episodes left to the final conclusion of at least this season of Supernatural. So, and this end of the show. So it's going at an interesting pace. I mean, usually I wouldn't have expected this kind of information until, say, maybe the halfway point, actually. So I'm glad that we kind of have a little bit up to speed. Hopefully more of these things kind of happen at a better pace, because that usually is what kind of happens in certain cases. Hopefully we keep getting information at a nice pace like we've been getting, and we just hit those conclusions. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.